What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another video, and today we're doing a review of Cinematic Studio Woodwinds. And so I've had quite a few years with this library. This is currently my favorite Woodwinds library to date. It's just incredibly consistent. It works really well with the other libraries from the same developer, and overall the tone is beautiful. The legato is gorgeous in my opinion, and for me that's a big draw for the library. And just the fact that it's so consistent with other libraries, it fits really well with other libraries as well from other developers, so that's a big plus as well. So let's get into the library. Let's hear the patches, and then I'll let you know whether it's right for you or not. I think for just a workhorse library in general, Cinematic Studio Woodwinds is a great choice. You can't really go wrong with it. And so let's kind of get into it. Before I start playing the patches, in case you want to download my sample library buyer's guide, it's completely free. It goes over all my personal recommendations for sample libraries in all the different sections: strings, brass, woodwinds, and percussion, all in one guide. It's really simple, really comprehensive at the same time. You can go through it in like 5 to 10 minutes. And I've also included the prices and utilities as well in case you're curious about how much they cost and how I would use them myself. And yeah, I want to give it to you for free. So if you click the first link in the description box below, you can grab it there as my thank you for checking out this video today. And without further ado, let's kind of dive on in and start with the flute. So let me quickly show you this patch folder structure here. So interestingly, this library has a little bit more content in terms of the patches, at least, compared to Cinematic Studio strings and the solo strings, and that's because they decided to record more instruments. So there's no dedicated ensemble patches, but you do have the individual instruments plus a few doubled instruments as well. So 2 oboes, 2 flutes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons. Those are the core 4 woodwind instruments in the orchestra. Then you also have the individual ones as well: flute, oboe, clarinet, and bassoon, of course. But then you also have some doublers. So you have the piccolo, which is basically a high flute. The cor anglais is the doubler for the oboe. You have the contrabassoon, which is a lower bassoon, basically. And then a bass clarinet is the lower clarinet. And you also have an alto flute, which is a slightly lower flute. Okay, so with that being said, let's hear the flute. Let's go through the articulations, and then maybe we'll play with the microphones a little bit so we can hear them as well. But let's kick things off with the flute legato here. All right, so there is the solo flute. I was just thinking while playing the other articulations that I was thinking back to the legato. So one of the things I like the most about the legato here is the fact that it's so seamless and so smooth. And I don't know exactly how Alex and the team programmed it the way they did to make it so smooth and seamless, but it feels like after the transition happens, the performer plays that new note a little while before the sustained sample kind of comes in, because I think a lot of sample libraries, they have the legato transition, and then right after that, like maybe a second after or a half a second, then the sustained sample comes in. So that phasing between those two samples becomes really evident. But I feel like while I was playing this, I kind of felt that the first sample, or the legato transition sample, played on for a little bit, like even 1-2 seconds before the sustain sample actually came in and bridged really seamlessly. Maybe that was just me, maybe that's not the case, but if that is the case, it's a really genius move, I think. That it allows it to sound so seamless, and the legato transition can just travel very smoothly without us having to worry about that sustain sample coming in really soon and then distracting us from that transition. Let's hear a couple of these microphones too. So that was the mixed mic. Let's hear the close mic. Let's have a listen to the overhead. Let's have a listen to the main. And the room, which we would expect to be the furthest one. Yeah, so I think the one that has the most detail and the balance with the room is the overhead. I think the overhead is exclusive to this Woodwind library. I believe that the strings, solo strings, and the breast do not have the overhead mic. So if you want a slightly alternative sound than the mixed mic, then the overhead's a good choice. If you want to create your own custom mix, of course you can do that too. But I personally like the mixed mic like 90% of the time. Sometimes I'll use the overhead as well, just for a different color again. But yeah, I kind of like the mixed mic and what it does. Speaking of which, though, I think this library is very all-purpose as well. Like, it can do solo lines really well. I feel like they capture these instruments with the intention of having them stand out in a soloistic context effortlessly. But I feel like there's also enough room information and mic positions that you can pull them back in the mix pretty easily and have them perform more ensemble context as well, like doubling with other instruments, pulling them back a bit so they don't overtake the lead line. I think it's quite versatile in that regard. So definitely a darker sound like the other libraries, right, that we're used to, CSS and the solo strings, consistent in that tone. But the clarity and the detail is definitely there as well. So let's hear the clarinet. Let's go through the legato, maybe some of the short ones. Let's keep on moving here. So here's the clarinet. Okay, then let's hear the oboe, one of my favorites in this library for sure. Okay, so that's a quick look at the oboe there. And you might have noticed during the legato performances, there is a little bit of crossfading between the different dynamic layers. I believe they're recorded at 3 or 4 dynamics. And so if you're riding the mod wheel during sustained notes, especially, you can hear some of those performances kind of gliding into one another, almost making it sound like two oboes performing at the same time, which is a little bit more noticeable than some of the other woodwind players being doubled or phasing, if you will. So just keep in mind that if you're trying to create a more mellow line or a line that is consistent in dynamic, then you don't have to ride the mod wheel too much. Just choose a dynamic layer you like, stick with that one, because if you go too far one way or the other, you're going to get that crossfading, that sort of phasing there. So just be careful. Overall, though, really, really nice. And the Mercado patches here function very well. Definitely better than the solo strings, in my opinion. Very similar to CSS. This functions as a nice runs patch where you can have this spiccato overlay, adding some attack to the beginning of each note, so it makes it sound more active and the performance actually tonguing out each note, if you will. That could be really useful sometimes too if you want more of that attack. So yeah, let's move on to the bassoon here. Okay. And this library actually made me kind of fall in love with the bassoon as well. Like a very creamy sound, but it like I like the light wispy nature of the bassoon, especially in the upper registers. They're near the very top. It has a lighter sound and it complements some other textures really well too, like the flutes and even French horn. It doubles really well there too. So let's get into these doublers. We have the solo piccolo. Let's have a listen to the English horn. Okay, then the solo alto flute, which is what I used in the When You Wish Upon a Star portion of my Disney medley on the channel. Okay, then we have the solo bass clarinet. All right, then the contrabassoon. Yeah, you can hear after holding the sustain there for a couple seconds, then it transitions into that sustain sample rather than remaining in that legato sample. All right, beautiful. Now let's get into the 4 doubler patches, or the patches where there's 2 players at the same time. So 2 flutes. Two clarinets. two oboes. And finally the two bassoons. All right, so there's a look at the entire library there. So I think these two player patches are good for if you want to layer another instrument of the same kind in unison, but you kind of risk phasing because they're identical samples performing at the exact same time. This patch kind of eliminates that. So you have those two players playing at the same time in reality, which creates that doubler sort of sound, which is cool. And so you don't have to do the transposition trick, or you don't have to fiddle around with the samples, like play them a different register and then push them back up. You get those patches right here. And if you want to create like 3, then you can just layer it with a solo patch. If you want to do 4, you can just layer 2 of them together, maybe slightly timing them differently. You have a lot of options here, but yeah, there you go. So CSW, I recommend as my personal workhorse library. I would also recommend it to you as a workhorse library as well, simply because it has basically every instrument you would need with all the core articulations. So it basically serves 90-95% of your core woodwind writing. And this library just makes me write for woodwinds more because I'm not afraid to let these instruments stand out on their own in soloistic purposes or back in the ensemble. But again, it's quite a versatile library. It gives you enough mic positions where you can fiddle with some closer detail and have some further away positions as well. But to be honest, I stick with a mixed mic 99% of the time. And then I'll bring in the overhead a little bit if I want a bit of extra body, but generally the mixed mic will do me very, very well. Okay. Really nice to have the doubler instruments in there too. Again, a lot of variety here, a lot of selection. So big props to Cinematic Studio Series for putting that together. And yeah, it's definitely stood the test of time for me, at least since its release. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions about it. If you do own this library, if you don't own this library, let me know why you do or don't, and if you enjoyed or not. I'd love to hear your thoughts there. And again, if you want to grab my sample library buyer's guide, it's 100% free. You can grab it using the first link in the box below, and it should give you a really comprehensive look at my different personal selections of all the different sections, plus piano, jet libraries, jazz libraries, ethnic libraries, some other categories that aren't included in the core 4 sections, but it's all condensed into that one PDF that you can grab right away. And it's my thank you to you for checking out this video today. So I really appreciate you watching. Hopefully this kind of helped you understand the library a little bit better. Let me know if you have any questions about it. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks again, and I'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.